Next up is Indivo X with Daniel Hock.
My squash score just went down. Yeah, I was trying to do stuff on Facebook.
All right, hi guys.
And my squash score just went down.
I'm Daniel Haas. I'm with actually the Children's Hospital of Boston. I work at informatics program there. This is going to be a slightly different flavor of presentation because we're an open source project. We're not a business. We're funded by research grants, and we're sharing. Interested in seeing what happens with health data when you share it around. So we really don't want to integrate it with Facebook because if you did, bad information might get out. So the big problem. Oh, I'm missing my punchline down here. The big problem with health information these days is that patients actually can't get access to their own data, which when I tell to a room full of technology people, they look at me like I'm crazy, but when I tell to a room full of health IT people, they sort of shrug their shoulders and say, well, that's life. But it shouldn't have to be. So the real reason that it's hard for patients to get data is that patients receive care at a number of sites. Care isn't an isolated thing. You might go to a clinic in one place. You might have to go to an ER at the hospital somewhere else. You might be getting data from your Fitbit that you wear when you're running around and exercising. And there's really no incentives for hospitals to share that data around. And if you think about it for a second, there probably shouldn't be, right? Hospital X shouldn't feel obligated to send all your data over to Hospital Y, just in the off chance that you might end up in the emergency room there and they'll need your data. So what we're trying to do with the Indivo X product is invert that model. Is saying the person with the incentive to gather their data is the patient themselves. So if we enable the patient to gather the data, then what we can do is let them connect to each of their hospitals and pull down a complete copy of their medical record so that when they jump into the next ER, they already have all of their information assembled and they can just go ahead and share that with the doctor. So what does this look like? Here's my ugly architecture diagram. But there's sort of two aspects to the Indivo system. The first is that it's personally controlled. So every part of the system makes sure that the patients are in complete control of all the data, who gets to see the data, and what you can do with the data. And the second aspect of the project is that it's a platform for applications. So we actually don't build any of the cool medical technologies that patients can use. What we do is publish an API that allows ordinary software developers who might not know too much about the intricate flows of healthcare data to build applications on top of it. So a typical Indivo setup to describe this ugly diagram is that down at the bottom we have data providers, and these are people who build applications to connect things like their hospital data feeds to your health record, and they use the API. We have the platform in the middle which stores that data, runs some OAuth to make sure that calls are coming in authenticated, and he publishes the API to allow people on top to build applications that let patients view that data. The other interesting thing that we do with Indivo is sharing, because managing healthcare is not an isolated thing. You're not going to be able to manage your care if you can't show it to your doctors, if you can't get your parents involved, you can't get your nurses involved. So we have sort of two models of sharing in Indivo. The first one's really boring. It's called a full share. You basically dump your whole health story into somebody else's lap. The second one we're a little more proud of. We call them care nets, and they're analogous to Google Plus circles. So on Google Plus, you create groups of people, and you can publish data into those groups, and only the people in those groups see them. With Indivo, you can do a similar thing, except when you create groups of people, you share with them applications that they can run, and data on which those applications can run. So I'll show that in a second to give you a better picture. As I said, we're a research lab, so we don't actually have a production deployment of our own software, but we do partner with a bunch of other organizations. So this is a picture of the user interface that the Children's Hospital of Boston built. It's going to look really different from the interface I'll show you in a couple of minutes, simply because all interfaces in Indivo are apps, because they run on our apps platform. So you can just construct your own. At Children's Hospital, we're currently serving 3,000 patients and their families. We also have a couple of other deployments. We're embedded in a social network for diabetics. helping them manage their health, and we have a couple of other research installations. So let's go ahead and run through the system. Travers, if you want to, my buddy Travers in the back is another developer on the project, by the way. He's going to help us log in. So this is our interface, which looks nothing like the Children's Hospital interface. And if you check it out, you'll see that there's this sort of unified sidebar on the left, but in actuality, the health feed in the inbox at the top and the sharing settings at the bottom are the only built-in parts of the interface. And all of that, allergies, labs, surveys, problems, that's all applications that other people have built, although we've actually built these as demonstrations. And basically, those are the applications that run against your health data. The rest is sort of stuff that we provide to enable patients to engage with the platform. So if you want to click on Timmy User and pull up the Labs app, we can demonstrate the kinds of things you can do with some of these applications. So this is a very basic application that we wrote in the mat a couple of days. And what it lets you do is basically pull up all of your lab results from the system. You can filter them, you can scroll around, and these are all powered by the API. Seem to be running out of time, so let me jump straight into the sharing piece. I mentioned these care nets that we have. If you click on Freddie User, let's share with him. So the first thing you have to do when you're sharing is add accounts. So say you wanted to manage your healthcare with your doctors. You could add an account to the system, and say John Doe was our doctor and we wanted to share some of our data with him. We could drag him into our physician's care net. We could do something very similar with applications. So say we wanted to share our problems with him. So this is where our favorite Google Plus UI, which we obviously copied, comes into play. And so now we've shared an application and a person into this physician's care net. So if we go ahead and log out and then log back in as John, in the interest of time, I skipped the stage. We added a couple of data points to that care net as well. But if you log in, you'll see that he has this additional tab called Freddie User, and it tells you shared into care net. And since we've added the problems application, you can click on the sidebar and you'll be able to see that application running. And we'll see a couple of problems in there that we've shared into the account. If I logged you back in as our original patient, you'd see that he actually has a much bigger list of problems, but we only chose to share these data elements. And so I think we're out of time, so I'll take some questions. Yep.
This puts a lot of responsibility on the patient, which probably doesn't happen that much in the real world. It sounds like you've been in beta and you have people actually using it. What percentage of people offered it, use it, and is it only people between the ages of 20 and 30 and people who do IT for a living?
So, well, there are a couple of populations involved here, right? There's the people who build the apps, which you're absolutely right. They're very limited. We're trying to build an open source community, and we have some people building apps for this, but that's not the population. There are the patients themselves, and there's sort of two categories that I can drop patients into. There are people who actually have conditions that they need to manage, and those people are really, really proactive. So pretty much 100% of those people who use the system come in regularly, check their lab results, make annotations, write down when they have allergies. At the Children's Hospital, we have a system that feeds that right back in front of the physician. So when they go in for their appointments, they can make annotations and the physician will see that. Then there's sort of the general healthy population, and it's a much harder sell. I don't know if any of you have heard of Google Health, which sort of went down in flames not too long ago. And their model was sort of, let's make some APIs available and throw up a system, let people log in and manage their own data. And it turns out healthy people just don't care. So it's true, it's a much harder problem to engage those people. And for that, we're sort of trying to, we're hoping to encourage the development of engaging apps. So if we have things that integrate with like systems like the Fitbit, device data that you can come in and manage your exercise. Exercise turns out to be one of the things that even healthy people care about. You can pull them into the system. But I think you're right. There's definitely harder populations and easier populations.
How would I actually use it? Can I just like snap a picture of my lab report and upload it, or do I have to enter the data manually?
So that would depend on what apps are available into your system, right? So the API just says, if somebody wrote an app that wants to send us labs data, we'll stick it into the system. Our basic labs app is actually read-only right now. You can't enter data even if you wanted to. But the general processes we have are, there's a data provider app. So if you actually get a lab test done at some lab and they build an app to integrate with us, then they'll just automatically populate your data. And second, if you build an app that you're proud of your OCR technology and you want to snap a picture and upload it and send it into the system, if you build that app, then anyone who runs that app can do the same.
So one important thing is that means you are still dependent on the healthcare provider to write your API to match, to feed you the data, right? So if you are like say Quest Diagnostics or something like that, if they are not on your thing, you can't get your data in, right?
So if the data provider doesn't want to give you their data, then there's not too much we can do about it, but we can build apps like his lab app. So say Quest provides you with a printout and you snap a photo of it and someone builds that app, then you can get that data in as well. That's the beauty of the open API. Go over there.
A significant amount of your user population is going to be people over a certain age, 60 and above, with various physical problems. How are they going to be able to use this application?
So I'm not sure I totally agree with you that a significant population is going to be that old, but
I mean, think about the baby boomer generation.
yeah, I think
Because you just said that people who are healthy aren't really going to care about this. And a small number, comparatively, a small number of that population is unhealthy and they will use this. Your bigger chunk is your retirement age and above.
yeah, and we try and make our user interface as intuitive as possible, but any technology product that's trying to engage the elderly populations is going to run into that problem.
Yeah.
So we build our sharing mechanisms such that they can sort of engage their family and get them involved in helping them manage their care. I think that's a big part of it, but you're right, that's a challenge. Any other questions?
No more questions, that's it.
And my final pitch, we're hiring, so if you want a job.